From the city of brotherly love, this is Shark Bite Biz with David Strausser.
You just arrived to the newest episode of Shark Bite Biz. I'm your glamorous host, David Strausser, and this is your place to learn how to grow a business during complete global chaos. Today, all about inspiration and creativity. First, though, we are hot off of our first live stream last Monday night back on July 25th. It's been a long week. It feels like it happened a year ago, but it was only 7 days ago to the day. And it was our first Shark Bite Biz live show. I've been teasing it for months. We finally went out. We did it. It was shown right here on YouTube. We had nearly 900 concurrent viewers at one point during the show. And in fact, you know, the replays of the show, it's nearly up to about 4,000 views without even one single ad or anything. So it was really good. And it was super special for us. Hey, a big, huge shout out to our co-hosts of Data Pine and G7 Tech Services and Vision 33, my company where I work, that really sponsored the event and helped us bring it all together to come together and really just make it happen. So I'm beyond belief the pilot was successful, and this fall we will be launching our own, regularly scheduled live stream show. It's going to be business and tech news of the day. Whatever hot topics are trending that day, we're going to cover it and then have a special interview. And then once again, we'll cover all of the chats and super chats at the end of the show. So also don't forget to help out the show. If you love what we're doing, if you want to see more Shark Bite Biz live, please do me a favor. Go to deadhousecoffee.com where you can get the freshest coffee known on earth that is roasted, sealed, and shipped to your doorstep within a 24-hour period. Plus, use the code SHARK. You'll get 20% off of your order, and all the proceeds directly help us doing all the wonderful work that we're doing here at Shark Bite Biz. Back to today's show. It's a great show because I gotta tell you, I was kind of surprised when I got into the interview of what it was about. I thought it was going to be one thing, and then a couple minutes before, it was like, oh, I get it. And it really comes full circle for us during this show, talking about all those things that small business owners love, creativity, innovation, as well as just the art of doing business. So who do we have today? None other than Gramps Jeffrey. Gramps Jeffrey's children's book, I Don't Want to Turn 3, explores what goes through a toddler's mind that parents are so desperate to understand. I would say married couples have that same thing, what the other one's thinking. But back on topic with children's books, it is based on the true experience that he has had with his 6 grandchildren that were born to each of his 3 millennial daughters. Gramps Jeffrey is the pen name for Marc Joseph, whose first book, The Secrets of Retailing: How to Beat Wal-Mart, was written to help entrepreneurs and small businesses compete against the big guys. Ariana Huffington read his book and asked him to contribute to the Huffington Post. He has written over 100 articles about small businesses, education, the homeless, and several other nonprofit topics dear to all of us. Gramps and his lovely wife, Kathy, live in Scottsdale, Arizona, where 2 of his grandchildren live. 2 more live in Austin, Texas, and 2 in Orlando, Florida. So, hey, without further delay, let's bring Gramps Jeffrey right on in here.
Creative and innovation tips.
Gramps, welcome to Shark Bite Biz. You, my friend, you just became Shark Bait.
Hey, thank you so much for inviting me. I think it's going to be fun.
No, it's going to be a blast. And first off, I've got to thank you we connected through LinkedIn, and I was just kind of like, hey, I think you'd be awesome to have on the show. And you were like, sure, I'll be on your show. And then you sent me 2 signed copies of both your books, which everybody, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see this. If you're not, we'll give you info at the end of the show where you can find them. But thank you so much for sending the 2 books. I got the I Don't Want to Turn 3 and The Secrets of Retailing, or How to Beat Walmart. And we'll dig deeper into both of those in a second, but we've got to start it off because we have a tradition on the show. Very first question. Who are you? Where do you come from? What do you do for a living? How did you get where you're at? Basically, in a nutshell, tell us what makes Gramps Gramps.
I come from a family of entrepreneurs. And, my dad, my grandfather on both sides were entrepreneurs. But I decided to go into the real corporate world. So I spent the early part of my career in corporate retailing and wholesaling for a couple of the major chain stores. And then finally, the entrepreneur bug came back to me. I said, I really do want to be an entrepreneur, just like my family had been. So I've started a couple of businesses. One business I sold to investors, and the other business I took public, and it became the premier business-to-business site on the internet where we sell case quantity small businesses all around the world, shipping to all 50 states, around 44 countries. Customer base are the moms and the pops who are surviving, thriving as the chains. So based on starting this business is we started to build a customer base of entrepreneurs, small business owners. And I was getting calls all the time on how do you do this? How do you do that? So I figured I'll write a book. So that's where The Secrets of Retailing, How to Beat Walmart came from.
How long ago did it come out?
It came out in the mid 2000s. So things have changed from them, but not a lot. It's interesting when you go back and read the book, a lot of the same concepts are the same.
I have Jeffrey Gitomer. Have you heard of him?
If his name's Jeffrey, it's got to be a good name.
Well, he has a book that is the Little Red Book of Selling, and he also has another one that's called The Sales Bible. And he's got a slew of books, like a little yellow book of this, a little black book of that. That's his stick, and it's pretty cool. But the Sales Bible, for example, that came out over 20 years ago, and people were like, why are you having yourself or your sales rep read those books? I mean, they're a little bit dated. There's a lot newer stuff out that might be better. And I read the book again, probably for like the 5th time, and I'm like, no, I mean, it's kind of weird because it's almost like we've come around full circle to where a lot of the stuff that he says back then, now in this COVID age and getting, hopefully looks like getting into post-COVID world, that's where this stuff is relevant again. And it is different, and doing these things are different because people aren't doing these things as much. Do you think the same could be said out of The Secrets of Retailing?
Yeah, the reason being is it's 15 chapters, and each chapter attacks something different. So for instance, how to hire your people, how to find your location, where to find your resources, how to price your goods, how to do marketing online, how to do marketing in the regular world. So each chapter is different. And the last chapter is how to sell the business. And that hasn't changed much. You go through the same thing of how to sell.
What about the marketing part? Because marketing has evolved, marketing online over the past couple decades. You look from the 90s where it first started up until where it is today in 2022. It's changed pretty drastically. How do you think your book fits into that space in these days?
Well, you're still talking to customers, and you're still figuring out how did you get customers. What's interesting about today's world and being an entrepreneur and starting a business, in my opinion, this is the best time in the history of the United States to become an entrepreneur and start a small business. And it's been driven because of the changes. Back when I wrote this book and so forth, everything was brick and mortar retail. That's the way life was. But that's evolved. But brick and mortar retail is very expensive to open up. You got to find a location, you got to hire people, you got to find products. Now, with what's happened with Amazon and Walmart and online, it's a whole different world. If you're an entrepreneur with a great idea or a great product, you now have all kinds of ways to market your product. In the older days, you had your town. You could market to the town. That's how it was. But today you have the world. So if your product or your item that you come up with, there's only 10 people in your town that like it. In the old days, you couldn't sell it. But all you need is 10 people in every town to like it. And all of a sudden, you've got a great business. So I would encourage, if any of your listeners are now thinking about opening a business or don't want to take that step, do it. This is the time. This is the time for entrepreneurs to rise and become the best that this country's ever produced.
So I want to ask you a question, because you've mentioned the E word now probably about 50 times in like the 5 minutes that we've been recording with entrepreneur. I just had Angela McArdle on the show. She was our season 4 finale. She's actually the chair of the Libertarian Party, and she's big into mom and pop businesses and entrepreneurship and all of that stuff. And she feels that there's a weird cultural shift going on right now to where, and don't get me wrong, I'm pure entrepreneurial. I got that built into my blood. But a lot of the younger generation, it's kind of like that's a yucky word for them. Do you see that at all? Do you relate with that? What's your feeling on that? Like, they want to stay away from it. They view it as greed in a way, that it's not a good thing to be an entrepreneur in 2022.
What's interesting, if you look back at the history of the United States, every generation, starting with George Washington's, 10% of the population want to be or become entrepreneurs. And it doesn't vary. It happened in the 1770s and the 1800s and the 1900s and the 2000s. And it's true today. There are about 10% of the population that really want to be that entrepreneur, that takes that step. There's lots of people, 40 or 50% think they're entrepreneurs or want to do it, but they don't have the guts to take that shot, because it takes guts. It takes a chance because, entrepreneurs, as we all know, 50% of them fail. And so, you've got, got 20% of entrepreneurs fail in their first year, 50% fail after 5 years, and the reasons that they fail, the reasons that entrepreneurs fail is, 42% of the time, there really is not a market for their product. We all come up with these great ideas. We think we got the greatest thing since sliced bread, and we think there's a market for our product. But, most entrepreneurs fail because it's a personal market. When you're a buyer, and I learned that when I was in corporate America, you don't buy for yourself, you buy for your customers. And so many of us lose touch that, entrepreneurs, our idea is the greatest thing and everybody's going to want it. 29% fail because they don't have enough capital. You step back a second, you got to figure that for the first 6 months when you're opening up a business, you're not going to have sales. You just got to plan it that way. So you got to go in with enough capital to cover you and your expenses for the first 6 months. So, but 29% of small businesses fail because they don't have enough capital, and 23% fail.
Can I just chime in one thing on that last point there?
Sure.
Even existing businesses, okay, we're technically a small business with my day job at Vision 33. And, we launched a new brand. We specialize with SAP Business One as our bread and butter for, probably 20 years, became #1 globally. And we ended up launching a second division with Sage Intact. And that was a much longer, harder road. It really, you look at 6 months, it took us probably closer to 13, 14 months worth of time and investment to actually get it right and get the sales machine turning and dedicated. And now we're doing pretty decent. But, even with an established business that has an established, hey, this is how you sell, this is how you market, like we have all those machines churning, by adding a second product line, it took us, well over a year to be able to really get that engine turning. So I think 6 months is Depending what business you're in, what industry you're in, that could be conservative. I think there's cases out there where it could be longer too.
Yeah, it depends on what the difference between the time of the sale and when you approach them when the time of the sale. Some sales happen the first day, some take 6 months, some take a year.
That's the type of deals we're in, where they usually take 3 to 6 months, maybe a year or two. I mean, we just closed one after four and a half years. It took us to close this one deal. We just got it closed finally at the end of quarter two.
Yeah, and then the last thing I was going to say is that close to a quarter, 23% of businesses fail because they don't create teamwork and communication. The first thing that I learned when I started the business is I'm not the expert in everything. There are so many things that I don't even like. Why stress yourself out and try to do it all when you should be hiring people who love that kind of stuff? I'm not an accountant. If I had to spend 8 hours a day doing accounting kind of stuff, I would go absolutely nuts. You've got to surround yourself with people that have love for things that you're not the expert in. And entrepreneurs have to realize they're not the expert in everything.
Ego is a hard thing there. I think that is something that some people deal better than with others. Like, for example, some people can be like, hey, you know what? I'm going to hire this person because they're better than me at this. Whereas some people, they just can't, their ego won't allow them to say that somebody else is better than them. And I think that's one of their greatest prohibitors in success.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So it's a journey. And again, going back to only 10% of Americans really want to take that journey.
Oh, that's absolutely true. And I love a lot of those stats and percents that you've thrown out. I've never known that, about 10% going all the way back to Washington's time were actually small mom and pop type business entrepreneurs, which brings me to my next question on that same topic is, again, with the mom and pop business, you said earlier that right now is probably the greatest time in history to start a business. We just finished, I think we just finished probably one of the greatest transfer of wealth, in all of history, given to the Walmarts, to the Amazons, to all those giant big companies. Okay. With that having to happen, how does that change the landscape going forward from here? Do you think that transfer has stopped and it's safe that mom and pops can get back out there and compete now? Or do you think this COVID thing is still going to make it hard for mom and pops to really get out there and fight with these huge giant businesses?
The internet is what is giving the moms and pops the opportunity to compete. Because again, you can reach all kinds of markets that you couldn't do 20 years ago. You can talk to all kinds of customers that you couldn't do 20 years ago. You can do research on how to target customers. You couldn't do that 20 years ago. So this internet, and if you think about it, and it goes back to my children's book when it comes down to it, is that I wasn't involved I didn't know how to do the internet and all this until I was 40 years old. But these little kids today are coming out as soon as they come out. Yeah, and these little kids coming out today, as soon as they come out, they're on the internet, they're on cell phones. They have the electronic ability, the knowledge that they are getting today versus my generation. I'm a baby boomer. We are who we are, and they will take this country to the next level. And it's up to us as parents and grandparents to balance everything they're learning on the internet with the real world and how to live just normally.
So it looks like you learned the internet pretty quick and were able to take advantage of it. I mean, you had mentioned about when, you learned the internet when you were about 40 years old. And it's funny because when you had said that, it triggered a story that I honestly just told my kids the other day. And it was when maybe late 80s, early 90s, it was probably like 7 or 8 at the time, be hanging out with their friends and they'd be like, hey, dial this number. And I'd be like, why? And they're like, it's the devil. Okay. And I'm like, the devil? And like, okay, let's see, you know, and we would all be scared. Here, I mean, all we were doing was calling up like a fax machine or some kind of internet service provider for dial-up internet because he'd hear those weird tones and stuff like that. But we had no idea what it was at that time. And that's why me, even though I'm 39, I don't view myself as a millennial. I strongly believe that between Gen X and millennial, there is a micro generation in between that I identify as called the Zennial, because of the fact that we grew up analog, like we were born analog and things like that, like dial-up modems. I mean, it was like, what's this? We had no idea. You know, and then we converted digital as we got older into the end of high school and stuff like that. So I don't know, that's just my take on that. But I wanted to give you that funny side story. So you ended up selling your business. Why you got 2 books? So your first book, The Secrets of Retailing, what made you want to write it? Was it just because so many people kept asking you the same questions that you mentioned?
Yeah, they were, you know, and I kept repeating myself. I said, well, maybe I should do this. But I guess I wanted to be a writer.
Tired of repeating yourself. Read the damn book.
Here's a book. But, I think I wanted to be a writer early on. When I was in college, my best friend and I decided we were going to backpack through Europe for 11 weeks. So, you know, we did everything you do with the riding and trains and sleeping in hostels and renting, motorcycle, whatever it is. But I kept a journal. I decided I was going to keep a journal every day. So I got this journal. I put together this journal. And, when I was writing this journal, it was about people. It was about people and experiences. And then about 10 years later, my friend called me. He says, "You got to read our journal." He says, "It's unbelievable." He says, "You need to be a writer." So I've always had that in the back of my mind. And then when the opportunity came up where I said, hey, I can educate a bunch of our customers on basic things that they need to know to be successful, that's what got me into writing my first book.
Have you ever, that's a pretty cool story about how the first book came about. But my other question that comes out of that is, have you ever thought about publishing your journal? I mean, if it's that good, that intimate details, I mean, just some rando journal, you can self-publish that relatively easy. Someone would find it. I'm sure one person would buy it. Maybe only me, but.
What happened was when my first book came out, The Secrets of Retailing, Arian Huffington read it. And, she's at the time had the Huffington Post.
Huffington Post, yes.
Yeah, and she asked me to contribute to the Huffington Post. So I've written over 100 articles for the Huffington Post on all kinds of different things about small businesses. But a lot of the articles I've written about are about nonprofits, about the homeless and education and all kinds of and the reason that being is what evolved as our business, because the business was geared towards moms and pops. But what happened, and as you well know, talking to people in many businesses evolve, they change. Your idea that you were going to do something may change and evolve. And in our particular case, what happened was Katrina hit. If you remember, Katrina was down in 2005 and 6 for Louisiana and Mississippi. And because we were so dominant on the internet, we had thousands and thousands of keywords and phrases that were organically ranked 1, 2, and 3. But all of a sudden, we were getting these calls from all these churches and schools who wanted to help the people and that were suffering. So, we went through all kinds of underwear and socks and toothpaste and toothbrushes. And then when they opened up the trailers, we went through all the kitchen goods and the bathroom goods and the bedroom goods. And so it opened up a wide idea to us that the nonprofit world was obviously underserved, and it gave us a chance to go in and really go after the nonprofits. So they would buy from us at wholesale and closeout prices, and they could stretch their dollars and help more people. And so that's how I got involved in doing a lot of, if you go to the Huffington Post, you'll see a bunch of my articles are about the nonprofit organizations and how we as a society need to help bring this country along and get more involved in making sure that we take care of each other.
When I was out there in LA. So my backstory, viewers of this show know I lived down in Mexico for like 15 years, lived in Peru for a year, then San Diego, LA, and now out in Philly. But and a small stint in Sacramento, but we'll skip that one. But when I was out in LA, I mean, yeah, we had homelessness down there in San Diego, but I would mostly see it down by the border region where you have, mostly bums, homeless people that would just live down there. They'd beg, and they were making good money begging in San Ysidro. Then they go back down to Tijuana and live. But when I lived in Los Angeles, homelessness was at a whole nother level. Like I could not believe it. Like the first time, obviously, growing up, I listened to bands like Skid Row, stuff like that. And when I learned that that was an actual place, it's like, oh, I've got to go visit it. And when I went there, it was like, no, I don't want to visit it because it is atrocious. It is horrible. And living out there every single year in my brother's name, I have two younger brothers that pass away. I'd always donate for the Thanksgiving and Christmas meals and stuff like that for Skid Row. But that's something that I agree with you. It always touches my heart, and that's a topic that I'm also very compassionate about personally as well.
Interesting, because that kind of leads into my kids' book.
Perfect.
The theme of the kids' book is, I don't want to turn 3, and then living this past year caused by the pandemic, COVID-19, in isolation, except for being able to be with my family, it gave me a chance to kind of watch and interact with these grandkids. And I got to tell you what a trip that was. I had 6 grandkids, and it happens they were all here for 6 weeks during the pandemic. 2 of them live here in Arizona, 2 live in Austin, Texas, and 2 live in Orlando, Florida. So they're scattered, but we had them all together. So, but watching them gave me a chance to really understand and see their sense of curiosity. How excited they do get when they do accomplish something. Watch them grow year to year, and how they interact with each other really is the basis for my kids' book.
Especially because it happened during COVID. I mean, depending on where they were living, some people were more freer to do things than others. But having that escape to be together, I'm sure they're not together, as frequently as they'd like to be. That had to be, kind of eye-opening just to observe how that interaction went during that time period.
Oh, yeah. What goes through a toddler's mind is the parents are so desperate to understand. When does a toddler understand the difference between me and us? So this book kind of explores it all together. But more importantly, as a baby boomer trying to understand, how the world has evolved since I was 3 years old, is also kind of part of this whole story. My parents, they didn't have the cell phones. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have cable TV. They didn't have the remotes. I was my dad's remote. He said, son, go change the channel.
Same with me. That's the type of TV we had.
Yeah. And so really, the real theme of this book is, at what age do you start to begin to take the responsibility for your actions? Is it 3 years old? Is it 13 years old? Is it 23 years old? Or in my case, with all these baby boomers I know, they still don't take responsibility for actions at 63 years old.
Exactly. So I don't know. I'm making a wild guess here, but I'm going to say that you're probably settled on the age of 3.
What happened with the age of 3, this story is a 30-page book, so it's a quick story, is that, Jordan was 2, turning 3 tomorrow. But every interaction he had, and this is basically the story.
Which, by the way, when Jordan being in that book, my son's name is Jordan. So once I told him, I said, I'm not going to read it to you to after we do the interview. Because once, pages will get crumpled and stuff like that. But I want to keep it pristine to the interview. But after it, I'm going to read it, because every time he hears the name Jordan, he doesn't matter if it's a sales rep in our company or whatever, he thinks we're talking about him.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, my Jordan now turned 4 too, because we wrote the book about a year ago. But so basically, Jordan interacting with all his kids. And again, it's based on a true story. All the pictures in the books are pictures that I took. I sent them to the illustrator and she made them into cartoons. Like, for instance, on the front page or the cover that you see, that is two of the boys in the bathtub I took a picture of. It happens to be Levi and Jackson. And Levi loves wearing goggles in the bathtub. And so that's what it's all about. But so anyway, Jordan, takes all his cousins' toys. He takes the sea creatures, the dinosaurs, and then on his third birthday, when everybody's together, his Olivia, his 8-year-old cousin, discovers all their toys in his room.
My daughter's name is Liv. So
Wow.
There you go.
What a coincidence.
Yeah. Are you? Can I just call you Dad from now on?
Call me Gramps.
But go ahead, keep going. Sorry.
So, and then the hero of the book is the father. He calls all the kids together and he gets them to talk. And Olivia comes up with this idea. She says, we need to give all of our toys that we've taken from each other and all these toys that he got for his birthday and give it to the homeless kids downtown. And that's how the story ends. So you said that kind of comes together with what we were talking about earlier. But this is this is Olivia's idea. It wasn't my idea to come up with that. It was Olivia's idea that they should do it all. And so again, it goes back to, I think this is the greatest generation coming up now, because if they're able to think through things like that when they're 8 years old, then this country has a chance.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. So one thing that I've always done is around Christmas time, we usually let the kids pick, hey, go pick one gift for yourself, and, we get 2 of them. Okay. When they were younger, they thought, oh, I get 2 of these dolls. And we would make them donate it into the Toys for Tots thing. So that way we were making sure I don't want to donate. If I'm donating a toy, I want to donate a toy I know kids will like. So I'm going to get something my kid would like, because I'm pretty sure other kids would like what, at least one kid would like what my son or daughter likes. And when they were, 2, 3, and not so cool about it. Jordan, when he was 3, is a little bit of a battle, but he eventually, okay, and throws it in there. Liv, who's now 9, I mean, she does it a lot easier. It's not a struggle with her. She understands, she gets it. She's like, oh, this is a good thing. That's so sweet, and compassionate about it. So I'm really interesting to see, Jordan being 4, he's going to be turning 5 this year, starting kindergarten, getting those experience. I'm really interested to see how he's going to react to that and how he has matured, throughout the past year. It's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like, how some people, put the marking on the wall to get their kids' height, and they keep that and they look at that as a memory as the kids grew. I mean, I kind of view my measuring stick by how they react to throwing those toys into the Toys for Tots bin.
You bring up a great point. What is parents' responsibility in today's world? What really is? In today's world, with all this instant information that we've been talking about, the uncertainty, the cruelty that we're seeing on television, the differences in ideas, what is really the true role of parents? Obviously, parents are there to provide their kids with food and clothing and a place to live. Obviously, they're also there to provide financial support and medical care and the chance to have an education. But we need them there to protect our kids in today's world. I mean, just read the news today, and you've got how do we create a safe environment? Which obviously includes supervision and controlling the situation. But never lose sight that the parents are the most influential people in our children's life. They have more power to bring all the good qualities that they need in life, things that you're talking about. Traits that parents should strive to have, and including the kids: honesty, responsibility, kindness, independence, respect, positive thinking. All this is stuff that you were talking about. Creativity, healthy, how to eat healthy, how to exercise, how to stay in shape. Success that can be learned from failure. I mean, we all fail.
Staying in shape, that has been one of the toughest things to do for the last 3 years. Okay. And I'll tell you why, especially as a parent. because you had lockdowns, you had COVID, limited, restricted, a lot of, I mean, even here in Pennsylvania, and I'm sure out in California, it was probably worse, or New York City, it was very restricted. It was very hard to, what do you do with the kids? Some parents would let kids play together, other parents won't, and it was a tough time to be a parent during that time period. And that's the one thing that concerns me. The homeschooling, all that stuff, how will that affect the future generations, that experience that they had of 2+ years in lockdown? And then we get out of the COVID mode and we're in major inflation mode to where, things are crazily expensive. So instead of getting life back to normal, you kind of can't, because a lot of people just can't afford it. And who knows what's next, whether it's a full-blown recession or if we start to get back to normal and it's just a dip. I mean, it makes it, I think the last 3 years as being a parent has been probably the hard, and I have a 19-year-old as well too. So I've been a parent for 19 years. I would say the last 3 years, even living through the Great Recession with a 5, 6, 7-year-old, which was very tough. I think the last 3 years was probably the toughest.
Well, you hit on something that we as adults have got to be concerned with. And this pandemic has our kids reading less. Okay. And again, I'm into reading. That's the reason I wrote this book, because I want people to read. But, according to the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, I think we call it UNESCO, 584 million children worldwide today are experiencing reading difficulties, 584 million. Now, that compares to before the pandemic, there were 460 million. So that's a 20% increase in this world of kids having, reading difficulties. That wipes out 2 decades of educational gains that we have made. The Stanford Graduate School of Education released a study that reported that second and third graders' fluency is 30% behind what it was.
You know what? Is that the report? So just so that people know timelines, I usually don't air this, but we, record interviews a few weeks before they're published. I'm in my midsummer break, so we're at just about mid-July recording this. But there was a report that just came out the other day. I saw it on Newsweek that actually said that the lockdowns, because of the closed school systems, actually was an error and made more harm than good in setting kids back, to the point of what you were just discussing. My daughter, for example, my wife's trying to teach her how to multiply more than just like 8 times 4, trying to do like, hey, what's 100 times 10, with 3 numbers times 2 or 3 numbers on the bottom. And she has no idea how to do it. It's like she's almost missed that. And she was in, the end of 1st grade to 2nd grade to 3rd grade during this whole COVID time period where everything was kind of, the system was shaken.
So let's talk about what we have to do to make up for that. You're absolutely right. We as parents, and I'm talking to grandparents too, have got to get our kids in the habit of reading and reading every night. Why do we need to do that? Again, I'm talking about 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old kids. Well, first of all, all of us have a few kids' books around the house. You got 20 or 30 books around. I want everybody to buy my book and read it, but there's 100 other great books too. But think about what it does and how we can influence these kids and make up for some of the things that they may be losing or they have lost. One of the reasons that we should be pulling a little child on our lap and having them pick out the book and start reading with them is increased bonding. It's a good time for us as parents and grandparents to spend quality time with our kids that we may not have as they're running around all day. It creates, it supports listening skills. Now, you and I both know that listening skills are our number one skill that we have. You as a podcaster and a communicator, you have to listen because you've got to ask the right questions. In sales, I've got to listen because I've got to make the right sales. Everybody has to have listening skills. So if you can teach these kids listening skills by having them, sitting on your lap reading a book requires them to listen. That's one of the things we can start to do early on in their lives. Another thing that we need to be doing is, reading a book to them creates cognitive and language development. There's plenty of words in these books these kids don't understand. It gives you a chance to explain it to them. And if you're talking about math, you can talk about math and how to do that. But it gives you a chance to explain it. There's plenty of these words in these books I don't understand. I got to look up. So it's a good way to communicate. And then, again, talking 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds, their attention span, they bounce off the wall all day long. Get them in your lap for 20 minutes, read them a book, it gives them concentration and self-discipline skills. So, that's how we as adults have got to start making up for what these kids are losing, by not being able to be in school for a couple of years.
And it's tough. It's tough. I mean, that's almost a full-time job upon itself. And, I'm also in the sales / biz dev type role with what I do with my day job. In fact, I write with Forbes for their business development council even and get published on there occasionally, like usually once or twice a month. But listening is really how you grow as a person, especially if you're in sales, or business development. You have to be able to hear the problem. I don't know how many times one of my sales reps, they just get their, I guess you call them happy ears, and they think that they heard one thing. And this is why I tell them, even though I have a sales rep that is, probably your age or maybe even a few years older than you, who I highly, highly respect. But sometimes, when he's talking to businesses, he hears the wrong thing, and I'm on there and I hear the right thing. No, we don't need to do that. We need to do it this way. And this is how you got to frame it. And this is how you deliver it. Okay, just go execute. Trust me. And he'll be like, okay. And ultimately, he doesn't do exactly what I say. He never will do exactly what I say, but he will do the gist of what I say and make it his own and execute. And ultimately, it delivers. We found that balance and we make it work beautifully. But listening is a critical skill. And I think that goes back to parenting as well, too. I mean, even we've had Soledad O'Brien on the show here, and obviously, being a celebrity newscaster and, the CEO of her own production company, and she was on 40 minutes. I mean, you think you'd want to talk sports or politics with her because, the sports and politics shows that she's done. But no, I mean, 40 minutes on here. And it was just, how do you be a stay-at-home mom while running your own production company that's pretty famous, that you're a CEO of? And she was telling us stories, about helping her kids with homework, having to listen to them, help them adjust. Then they should be like, oh my God, it's running late, throwing tater tots into the air fryer, munching them down, and then having to film her TV segments for HBO, what is it, Sports with Brian Grimble or whatever it's called, and having her kids actually stand there and hold the lights. And it was just one big team effort during the major part of the lockdown. And I was like, wow, that hearing stories like that is what I shoot for with these interviews, because I could have asked her a political question that she probably got asked a billion times already, but I'd rather hear that story about the tater tots and how she manages that work-life balance between, her family life and being a successful TV personality and a production expert, how she balanced all of that while being pretty much on lockdown during COVID.
Great story.
Yeah. So anyways, Gramps, hey, this has been pretty fun. I think we've touched on a bunch of topics, talked about both your books. So I got to ask you, how can people digitally stalk you? Where can they find you out online? Also, tell them where they can buy your awesome book.
You can buy both the books on Amazon.com or about Barnes & Noble, about 100 other sites out there, or come to my sites, GrampsJeffrey.com, or the other site is IDon'tWantToTurn3.com. Or if any of your listeners want to continue this conversation, have them feel free to email me at GrampsJeffrey@gmail.com. I'd love to keep talking about this.
Oh, definitely. 100%. We will definitely make sure that, if they can buy the books off GrampsJeffrey.com, I'll probably throw it on Gramps Jeffrey. I'll throw that link out there. I'll have it down there in the description. Click on that. You'll be able to find his books, whether it's the retailing side Or if you want to get the I Don't Want to Turn 3 book to kind of, help teach your kids about all this good stuff and help them grow and really, start reading to them again. I think that's one thing a lot of parents got out of the habit of with the havoc that COVID has brought upon us. I think there's a lot less parents reading to their kids, and it's just more digital entertainment, whether it's audiobooks or maybe they're reading a digital book, but they're not reading a hard copy book like this, like they used to. So anyways, thank you so much, Gramps. It's been awesome having you on the show. And I'd love to have you back in another year or so and catch up and see what your next book's going to be.
You got it. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Yep, no problem. Thank you. Cheers. Wow, that was an awesome, kind of heart-touching interview with Gramps, wasn't it? If you loved it as much as I did, do me a favor. Hit that little heart button and give us a super thanks, Show your love to Shark Bite Biz. First, though, you all know the routine. If you found this interview helpful, if it gave you those warm and fuzzies, do me a favor, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button. But if you really want to help us out, because Shark Bite Biz is the greatest kept secret in all of small business, please do me a favor, share this out to your friends, your family, your colleagues, anybody that's looking for either personal, professional, or business growth. That's what we're here to help you do. Break through all the fuzz that's out there and just hear the direct message, something that'll make your brain go clink and bam, unlocks your full potential. That's what we're doing. Help us reach as many people as we can. Share us out Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, anywhere, Rumble, Minds, I don't care. Share us out. Just spread the good gossip of Shark Bite Biz. Now let's get back to the real rock star of this show, Gramps Jeffrey. Couple things here. First, really was surprised that he wrote so much on some of those passionate topics of him with the Huffington Post and working with Arianna Huffington. That was really, really, gnarly to me. I mean, that I've talked to Arianna one time, and it just so happened she was going to publish one of my articles. She really, really loved it. And it just so happened to be, I guess that's when she ended up getting out of the Huffington Post like a week or two later. And the article never actually moved forward at all, which was a bummer. Kind of got lost in the transition. If I had sent it, a few weeks or a month earlier, could have been a total different story for me personally in those regards. But that's where you've got to, think. Procrastinate, and you take your time doing things, and that's what happens. That's why procrastination is bad. You need to go out there and just get it done, high quality, but as fast as you can. Get it off your plate, because sitting and waiting means that you're not able to get it flipped and turned around, like with my case with the Huffington Post. But for Gramps Jeffrey, that worked out amazing for him. And that's really where I want to start off with his book. People that are listening to the show on, whatever audio platform you're on, Spotify, iTunes, Audible, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, everything that we are, Deezer, Stitcher, all those places. But I do have a copy of Gramps' book, The Secrets of Retailing, or How to Be Wal-Mart here. And you got to remember, this was written when he was the president and COO for a company. And what I'm about to say has become kind of a common trend on the show. So think about this. A lot of things go full circle. Look at bell-bottom jeans, or, things, I've just seen articles where people are buying vintage clothing and making it stylish again. Trends come and go, and they go in circles. And that's where even Gramps said that, his book's really dated, but for right now in this COVID area that we're in, hopefully getting past COVID, maybe not, who knows? But in this era, this time that we're in, the book is relevant again, if you apply it with the modern mindset. Because you got to remember, a lot of the tools, automation, stuff like that, analytics, business intelligence that we have now were not available when he wrote this book. Okay. So if you take his book and think about this, okay, for all those small businesses out there, if you're reading this book and then you're framing it in your mind towards how you can apply that knowledge, but with today's technology to achieve growth in your business, I think it's very extremely plausible. You know, it is a realistic and valid goal of being able to do. And we've talked about that. I think even during the interview, we were talking about how I've had my team, my sales teams, that is, read a couple of Jeffrey Gitomer's old books, like The Sales Bible and The Little Red Book of Selling and stuff like that, because I think those things are valid today if you frame it in the modern mindset, that those tips and tricks from back in the day when they were written, they're valid again right now because COVID, again, has changed the game. And it's really something that some of these older tactics are able to be used once again because we've gotten so far off the path of using some of these old tried, tested, and true methods that just need a little bit of a modern twist. Okay, so let's win our money back from all these mega corporations that were able to stay nearly fully open during the whole pandemic, while many of you small business owners out there were not given that same privilege. You had to close your business, and that totally sucks. So I think the knowledge in this book is going to help you close that gap and start taking that money back from these mega corporations. Now, let's get into the topic of why he was on this show. You know, his new book called I Don't Want to Turn 3. It's a great children's story. Again, I promised I would not read it until after this episode aired, because once I get it in front of my 4-year-old, that book is going to end up with minimal, wrinkles, crinkles, all that good stuff. So I wanted to keep it in pristine condition until now. But we are good. I have flicked through it personally, and it's a great story. So if you look at his previous book, The Secrets of Retailing Again, okay, it's written by Marc Joseph. That's his real name. Again, if you remember from the intro, his pen name is Gramps Jeffrey. And this is how, again, you can tell that he's a true entrepreneur because, he has 6 grandchildren. He's not, a young kid out there just out of college or something like that. And basically what he was able to do was he innovated how he did business. He found something that was inspirational and creative to him and really meant something to his heart. As far as his family, his daughters, and his grandchildren. And he was actually able to turn that into something that he loves, which was creating a brand new book, inspiring a brand new children's book, and doing, an original story. So that was really pretty awesome. Truthfully, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the story. Now, you got to go way back in Shark Bite Biz history for this, but all the way back in season 1, episode 9, we had Brian Vander Ark. For people that don't know him, he's the lead singer of the band The Freshmen. Say that again. For people that don't recognize him, okay, he is the lead singer for the band The Verb Pipe. They had a previous #1 hit called The Freshman, but basically they weren't able to follow up with the hits. Now, he's entrepreneurial and he found a new market. What he ended up doing was instead of creating adult music, okay, rock music, he ended up making children's rock music. And that gave him the ability to keep doing what he loved and still making music. And while, he didn't make it mega rich off these children's albums, it allowed him to keep doing what he loved. It allowed him to survive. It allowed him to provide, put egos aside, and he got inspiration from his kids to be able to do that in the same way that Gramps Jeffrey ended up getting that inspiration to be able to create his book there. So awesome stuff, Gramps. Thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story, how you created your book, the inspiration behind it, talking about retails and how this stuff is valid once again. I'm very grateful you sent me the books. I'm going to have the links to both books down below. Please grab them on Amazon. Like I said, they'll be down in the descriptions. Question of the day. What was your last career jump? When did you move from maybe the COO to an aspiring children's author? Let us know down there. I'd love to hear some stories you all got. Do you want to be on the show? If so, please shoot an email to interviews@sharkbitebiz.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that join button. For only $3 a month, you can become a baby shark. And don't forget our amazing fresh roasted coffee. You can get it at deadhousecoffee.com. Use code SHARK. You'll get 20% off. We'll get all the proceeds to do the magic that we're doing. You all know this by now, but I'll say it once again. I'm David Strausser. This is Shark Bite Biz. We'll see you all next episode. Ciao.
Thank you for listening to Shark Bite Biz. We hope you got some insightful info from this podcast. Be sure to subscribe to us through your favorite podcast app and visit us on the web at www.sharkbitebiz.com. How has business changed for you in the 20s? Email us at podcast@sharkbitebiz.com so you can join us and share your story.